Bob, and I want to get this across. You see, Bob wouldn't have to protect himself by doing this if he hadn't been leaking information to John Lear and myself and other people to try to get this information out. And the reason that he's gotten into this predicament is because he's a patriot. He cares about this country, and that's what's made him do this.
That's beautiful, Bill, that you did this. Unsolicited testimonial, basically, is what it comes down to. And you're right. In a way, it was sounding that way. But also, he did, towards the end, mention the fact he was hoping some of his compadres would come forward, too.
Yes, and that's something else I need to address. But first, I'd like to say that I personally, and also Tony Pelham, and also the Channel 8 news staff, George Knapp, and several other people, John Lear, we have all investigated this man's background thoroughly because we didn't want to be sucked into a trap by the government. And I can tell you that he is who he says he is. He has worked at Los Alamos. He is a physicist. He's a theoretical physicist. He has worked at Area S4 in Groom Lake. We have verified all of this, not just me, but several other people. And I've also verified it by two different sources of mine who are within the government. One works for Lawrence Livermore National Laboratory. On the comments about his...
by the way, Bill, not to interrupt you, but I had no idea you guys did that.
Oh, yes, all of us did it because we're terrified just like you are. And we're always on the lookout for somebody trying to trap us in something that we can be discredited by.
After these series of shows on the Billy Goodman happening with Bob Lazar, suddenly Goodman hit big all over the western United States. And he had quite a going concern there. Like I said, this was a number of years before Art Bell. This was a number of years before I started broadcasting. And UFOs were still an anomaly on the open airwaves. And remember, there was not an internet like there is today. You could not find this stuff on the net because the net wasn't accessible. So suddenly Goodman hit it big. Now, for some unknown reason, I still am not sure why, KVEG fired Billy Goodman. However, he was soon to get another radio program on the Infotainment Network out of Utah. But in the meantime, this was toward the end of 1989, the beginning of 1990, and things began to change. George Knapp had done or was planning another series of UFO specials. Now, down in Las Vegas, they play hardball. And I'm talking about real hardball. There were a number of other competing television stations that were pretty upset at the huge ratings that Knapp had garnered. So, playing hardball, what these people did was to go out and hire some private investigators. And they began following George Knapp and Bob Lazar around. Now, Lazar is a rather interesting guy. Even today, it's been a number of years since I've spoken to him, but still there are things that periodically pop up about Bob Lazar. During this period of time, Lazar, after he had left his gig at S4, he had taken a number of people out to the Groom Mountains to watch a secret test of one of these objects, whatever they were, regardless of whether they were a genuine flying saucer from outer space or some type of ultra-top-secret government project. He let John Lear, Gene Huff, and his sister-in-law know that there was going to be a test. At the time, they were testing these secret craft mostly on Wednesday evenings. They all went out there. They saw a test of something darting around the mountains at unbelievable speeds. Just a brilliant white blob of light. But when they got all done, later, as they were leaving, they got caught. They got stopped. And as a result, Lazar was busted. Now, he was taken in for a debriefing. He was, according to his own story, threatened at gunpoint. There were a lot of other things that happened. But Knapp was getting all of this on the TV show. And while they're following Knapp and Lazar around, Lazar was privy or knew a madam that had a house of ill repute in Las Vegas. Now, we're talking about Clark County. Now, prostitution is legal in the state of Nevada. However, Clark County, where Las Vegas is situated, it is not legal. And according to Knapp's reporting, Lazar had gone down at the request of this madam and had set up a computer and software and security system for her. So, Knapp found out that they were being followed and that this competing television station was going to run this report on Lazar going to a bordello. Well, Knapp did what any good, quick-thinking journalist would do, convinced Lazar to go on the air and preempt their story, which opened up a whole new can of worms. In the interim, Knapp had also gone to John Lear and several other people, including Cooper, and had interviewed them for his TV show. Now, during the course of this interview, Lear let out a story that I was to cover extensively in UFO magazine about one of his documents known as the O.H. Krill document. Now, you've got to be a little familiar with the UFO history in this country to know where this originally came from. But back in the late 50s, Navy intelligence got their hands on what turned out to be probably one of the first channelers, a woman back east who claimed that she was in mental contact with an extraterrestrial being that she called Krill, C-R-Y-L-L. Later on, when John Lear was putting his paper together, along with another guy by the name of John Grace, another UFO researcher who at that time was still active duty Air Force, put together a document called the O.H. Krill document. The name Krill was kind of an inside joke about this early 1950s entity case, and the OH they pulled out of thin air. However, Bill Cooper was claiming that he read this document, the same document that John Grace and John Lear had just written a year or so before, in his secret Navy files back in the about 1972-73. Well, of course, that was patently impossible. Impossible. And Knapp pointed out this inconsistency on his TV show. Now, Cooper immediately went on the attack. He attacked Knapp, he attacked Lear, he attacked Lazar, and claimed that Bob Lazar had been arrested for having a drug lab. Now, anybody that knows Lazar knows that Lazar dabbled in jet cars, and he had a lab where he worked on these jet engines that he called his speed lab. Cooper took this speed lab reference and turned it into drug dealing. His modus operandi has always been, if you try to hurt me, I'm gonna hurt you first. And this is when I became involved, because quite frankly, I knew all these people. I had been watching Cooper. I had been watching the way Cooper's story had changed over a period of time. And I was one of the first people that was in contact with him when he first came out of the woodwork in the summer of 1988. Well, things were about to get a whole lot nastier. After I began doing my investigation, I started to interview a lot of the principals in this case. And of course, one of the first people that I interviewed was Bob Lazar. And Bob Lazar had some very interesting things to say about Milton William Cooper.
That I found so amazing is that John Lear was basically the reason that Cooper ever received any notice in the UFO field at all. Right. And he really took him in, he befriended him, he gave God knows how much information.
Oh, I know. I was there the one time when I think it was one of the first times Cooper came over. We sat down, and Cooper was just awestruck over what John Lear was saying. And, I basically asked John, who is this guy? And he said, he's okay. And I went on and told John some things. And Cooper said, I'll tell you one thing, you guys know a hell of a lot more than I do. And, that's a quote directly out of Cooper's mouth. Now Cooper knows all, and I don't know what Cooper really did, what his involvement
as going back to 1972, 73?
Who knows? I don't know.
Well, I've got a hell of a lot of information.
So, this was another inclination that a lot of this appeared to be made up on the spot. Now, the other thing that Cooper was really pushing then was the JFK assassination tape. Now, remember that in this tape, which was originally made by Lars Hansen, and it was never meant for public dissemination, Hansen had given a copy of this to Lear, thinking that Lear might be able to help finance his research. Cooper appropriated that. Suddenly, Cooper was claiming that he read in his top-secret Navy files back in 1972, 1973, that the limousine driver had actually been the person to fire the fatal headshot into JFK. Now, originally on this tape, and originally Cooper claimed that what the Secret Service agent was shooting was a .45 caliber handgun. Now, I'm quite familiar with firearms, with weapons, not only from my military service, but from my law enforcement service. And I'm here to tell you that if you have never fired a .45 automatic or seen one fired, it has extensive muzzle blast. Believe me, you can't miss it. But it's obvious on this videotape that there is no muzzle blast, which in hindsight makes sense because there's no gun. But when that became obvious to Cooper, suddenly Cooper started claiming that this was a secret CIA air gun firing a pellet loaded with shellfish toxin. Now, when Hansen discovered that Cooper was starting to hawk this at every venue he could for $25 and $30 a pop to buy a copy of this tape, he tried to get Cooper to stop. Cooper absolutely refused. I mean, when you talk about blatant, one thing you can't take away from William Cooper, he was the most blatant BS artist I have ever run into. But there was a radio host out here in Los Angeles at the time by the name of Tom Leykis. And right before a major presentation that Cooper gave at Hollywood High School, Lars Hansen went on the Tom Leykis show with Bill Cooper and debated him. And just to give you an idea of how Cooper handled these type of things, well, I'll have Lars Hansen and Cooper show you.
Sir, I wasn't pushing this to the public. This was to get support and assistance from other researchers and from investors.
This thing is discredited on its face. You talk about...
Well, fine. That's why I'm not promoting it. That's why I'm not promoting it. That's why I haven't been promoting it.
Well, then,
I mean, you know, what kind of argument?
Fraud, because you're putting out a piece of garbage, and now you're backtracking. Sir, you put out a piece of black and white nonsense.
Hey, look, we've already heard that, pal. I didn't put it out. I gave poor quality copies. That's all I had to work with at the time. The reason I made it was to get some backup and support. That's why I got in touch with Greitz, hoping that some of his associates, like Ross Perot, might be able to fund my getting hold of an excellent quality copy and having it digitally analyzed. That was the reason the thing was produced. If you did any research, you might have known that. That's why I haven't been promoting it or pushing it to the public. Okay?
Well,
Cooper's the guy that's doing it.
Here's another discrepancy there, because you got that copy you had directly from Groden, who, according to you, has the best copy in the world. You told me that yourself.
No, I did not.
Oh,
Bill.
yes, you did.
I got that copy, an 8
Oh, yes,
I have
you
the
did.
man who gave it to me, a Super 8mm copy from David Evans, okay, in Northern California.
You told me you got your copy directly from Bob Groden.
No,
and
I
Bob
did
Groden
not.
is the man you cite as your hero and the best researcher and expert on the field.
He knows
The
a lot
man
more
who
about it
lied
than I
to
do.
the Senate committee about William Greer not taking his hands off the wheel, which people are going to be able to
Well,
see
he's not the
on
only-
August the 19th at Hollywood High School, I guarantee you. And they'll make up their own mind. And when they see that, your credibility is going to be down in the bottom of the pit.
Bill, my whole point was to get to the truth about the issue of who...
We're going to get to it, but the people are going to decide the truth, not you, Lars Hansen. They're going to see for themselves.
I'm not trying to stop it, Bill. Long before...
Oh, yes, you are. You're doing everything you can to stop it, but you won't. The American people
Bill,
are going to see that film, and they're going to know who killed their president.
Long before you ever latched onto this subject, Bill, I made the tape and began the